With Laplace gone, Diablo remained, smiling as everything unfolded according to plan. He relished the opportunity to watch his master, Rimuru, wage battle up close, using it as a valuable reference for his own future service. Diablo aimed to determine how he could best support Rimuru moving forward. Diablo knew that joining the battle would only be necessary against someone like Lady Velgrind, and it would be a waste otherwise. He believed in the importance of fighting worthy opponents to hone strength, and he saw signs of growth in Benimaru and the other top cabinet members. Benimaru, usually calm but belligerent in battle, was growing stronger. Diablo, confident that Rimuru's orders were law and that they were not allowed to die, believed that surviving this battle would make them all stronger. He valued actively acquiring and using power to its fullest, hoping that this battle would provide the perfect stage for such growth. Diablo observed the battle, noting Testarossa, Carrera, and Ultima's approaches. He believed a tougher fight would benefit them, ensuring their survival and growth. As he watched Rimuru and Velgrind's fight, Diablo's excitement reached its climax. On the outer deck of the Emperor's flagship, the Imperial Knights gathered, their spirits high with Velgrind's presence. They were confident of victory and eager to do their part. The Knights voiced their loyalty to the Emperor, believing that victory would lead to the conquest of the Western nations and the unification of the world under a single banner. As they watched the enemy approach, some knights scoffed at the Demon Lord's minions, confident in their assured victory with Velgrind on their side. However, the majority remained silent, unsheathing their swords as they prepared for the final battle. They recognized the clear threat before them and moved to intercept the approaching forces. Unbeknownst to them, despair was close at hand. The knights, unaware of the impending doom, were about to face a harsh reality that would soon end their lives. Testarossa flew gracefully through the sky, her expression somber. Spotting people atop the airship brandishing swords, she commented on their cluelessness. Benimaru remained silent, acknowledging the natural behavior of an opposing force, but not voicing agreement. Testarossa, annoyed by their misjudgment, declared them pathetic for underestimating the strong. Though she desired to show off her skills and instill fear, she decided it was better to eliminate the interlopers quickly to stay on mission. She unleashed the nuclear magic death streak, a forbidden spell capable of destroying souls. A jet-black sphere formed around the airship, bringing death to everyone inside. Nearly everyone on board the airship died instantly, bathed in a lethal, insidious ray from Testarossa's death streak spell. Major General Zamdo, busy preparing for the battle, was among them, ceasing to exist without realizing what had happened. Rimuru, distracted, couldn't heed Caligulio's pleas to save his soldiers, and death claimed them all equally. Benimaru remarked on the swift success of the preemptive strike, and Testarossa admitted she might have overreacted, just wanting to save them trouble. She smiled gleefully at Benimaru's acknowledgement. Despite some banter, Benimaru was relieved to be spared the effort. However, Ultima and Carrera were reproachful, wanting a piece of the action. Testarossa, with a wry grin, pointed out survivors on the airship, real tough opponents who withstood Deathstreak. Ultima and Carrera, recognizing the value of Testarossa's approach, relented. With renewed focus, Benimaru gave the command, and the raid began. When the group landed on the outer deck of the airship, they found the Imperial Knights reduced to a pile of corpses. Some knights, still clinging to life, fruitlessly reached for the sky. Their fates were sealed the moment they crossed Testarossa. Ultima grumbled about the waste, lamenting that high-quality opponents could have been useful. Testarossa pointed to the bow of the flagship, where the highest echelons of the Empire stood: Emperor Ludora, the still-sleeping Velgrind, Kondo, Damrada, and several others. Benimaru boldly addressed the Emperor, stating their demands for unconditional surrender to cease hostilities. Ludora allowed Benimaru to speak, and upon hearing the terms, the Imperials were infuriated, particularly Marco, who insulted Benimaru. Despite this, Benimaru remained focused on Ludora, uninterested in engaging with the knight. Ludora found the demand ridiculous and refused to let his ambitions end. Benimaru, embodying his god-ogre nature, saw no point in lengthy negotiations and declared, "Then die." He was prepared for a battle to the death, fully committed to Rimuru's orders to annihilate their enemies. The atmosphere was explosive as Velgrind, who had been asleep, suddenly awoke. She realized her replication had been captured by Rimuru and sought to return her powers to her body. Feeling threatened by Benimaru and the three demonesses in front of her, she was aware of the urgency. Shion and the others expressed their delight and admiration for Rimuru's capabilities. Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera, fully understanding Velgrind's strength, were left in disbelief. On the Imperial side, the realization of Rimuru's power caused an uproar. Emperor Ludora, usually calm and collected, shouted in shock. He had underestimated Rimuru, failing to see him as a threat on par with Veldora. Kondo, recognizing his mistake, resolved to protect the Emperor no matter what. Damrata had always considered the Demon Lord Rimuru a significant threat. Yuki, despite his cunning, had found it impossible to manipulate Rimuru, proving his danger. Damrata was drawn to people like Rimuru and Yuki, with their inscrutable charisma and mysterious possibilities. He had made a distant promise to Emperor Ludora, but felt uncertain about keeping it. Entrusting his fate to others, he believed in people like Yuki and Rimuru. Rimuru's rage, devoid of reason, made Damrata uneasy, sensing imminent danger. With the Empire's best forces assembled and no sign of reinforcements, they had failed to overpower Rimuru's forces. Damrata stayed on guard, ready to protect the Emperor. The other knights, including Marco, struggled to maintain composure. Velgrind's acknowledgement of Rimuru's equal power disturbed even the strongest among them. Both sides were stunned and surprised, but Velgrind broke the silence. She proposed defeating their opponents and using them as bargaining chips to make Rimuru bend to their will. Emperor Ludora agreed, commanding his knights to prove their powers. The Imperial Knights' agitation vanished, reassured by Ludora's powerful voice. Velgrind, flashing a fierce smile, foreshadowed the horrors to come. She activated the 8 Impervious gates, isolating the flagship inside an alternate dimension. Each gate allowed only one person to pass, and all 8 had to be destroyed to escape. When Benimaru suggested charging into the last remaining gate, Velgrind praised his intelligence, explaining that only the person who killed a guardian could move to the next gate. Confident in her chances, she had no problem explaining the rules. Velgrind's dimension, maintained at low magicule cost, ensured that no one could escape or reach Ludora without breaking through all the gates. The 8 Impervious gates put the defenders at a disadvantage, knowing the raiders could plan their approach for each guardian. Velgrind, however, preferred this strategy to avoid all-out warfare and to keep Rimuru's soldiers banished in an alternate dimension. Benimaru accepted the challenge without hesitation. Velgrind, confident in her strategy, believed there was no way to lose. Even if all the enemies charged her, she felt assured of her victory. Benimaru understood her intentions, but saw no way to avoid combat with Velgrind, opting for the path with the best chance of winning. With both sides agreeing to the terms, the stage was set for the final battle. One by one, the Imperials disappeared into the gates, with Velgrind being the last. She exchanged a light embrace with Ludora before entering her gate. The gates then moved, encircling Benimaru and his team. Despite the rearrangement, Benimaru remembered who entered which gate. Shion, however, complained about the cowardly move. Benimaru, understanding her recklessness, thought about the pain she put Diablo through. Ludora, confident in Velgrind's victory, treated the battle as entertainment. Benimaru, figuring out who should face whom, was interrupted by Shion, who impatiently kicked open a gate and stepped inside. Despite her impulsive behavior, she chose the perfect opponent. This left 7 more doors, with one containing Velgrind, to be tackled last. Veyron requested to face Marco, seeking to settle his score. Benimaru saw the wisdom in starting with an opponent they could beat and granted permission. With that settled, Agera spoke up, requesting to face Kondo, a fellow swordsman he had yet to settle a score with. Benimaru, curious about Agera's fighting style and aware of Kondo's formidable abilities, asked if he was confident in winning. Agera, pausing, admitted his desire to fight Kondo despite the risks. Carrera, the demon Agera served, offered her support, assuring Benimaru of their capability. Benimaru nodded, seeing the wisdom in Agera's request. Benimaru, acknowledging the difficulty of defeating Kondo, asked Agera not to lose and to avoid dying. Carrera, with a laugh, suggested testing Agera by letting him handle the first challenge to see if winning would open the next gate. Ultima agreed, noting the importance of fighting again after victory. They speculated that only certain people might qualify to challenge Velgrind. Benimaru approved the idea, opting to let Agera's group test it first. Agera would be the main fighter, with Esprit assisting him. Zonda, a healing specialist, would join to heal allies returning from their gates. Everyone agreed to this plan. Benimaru assigned Agera, Esprit, and Zonda to the gate guarded by the large spear-toting Imperial Knight who had insulted him. Though tempted to handle the knight himself, Benimaru entrusted this task to Agera. The trio, confident in their mission, entered the gate for their battle. With 2 gates now being attempted, the remaining group waited for Benimaru to decide the next move. Benimaru confirmed they would plan the next attack once Agera's group returned. The gate guarded by Velgrind would be tackled later, with Carrera facing Kondo and Veyron taking on Marco. This left Damrata and 2 of the 4 knights. Benimaru noted that the head of the Imperial Knights seemed the toughest, volunteering to face him. Ultima chose Damrata, and Sue opted to take on the dual blade-wielding knight. With opponents selected, Benimaru and Sue agreed on their choices. Benimaru expressed frustration that the opponents hadn't given their names, making it troublesome to identify them. Sue reassured him that names weren't crucial, only the identity of those they defeated mattered. The group agreed, focusing on the upcoming battles rather than their opponents' monikers. Agera, Esprit, and Zonda passed through the gate in high spirits, entering a circular battle arena where a lone man awaited them. The man, Garcia, 5th-ranked Imperial Guardian and one of the Emperor's 4 personal bodyguards, laughed gutturally as he readied his Legend-class spear. Despite his intimidating demeanor and weapon, Agera's group remained calm. "We're not interested in your name," they retorted, mocking Garcia's arrogance. Infuriated, Garcia released his suppressed power, radiating intense fighting spirit that cracked the arena's marble floor. He stepped forward, challenging them to brace themselves and regret making him angry. Agera, hand on his sword, opted to focus on defense, waiting to see how Garcia would react. Esprit used Agera as a shield, casting magic from afar, while Zonda provided support with recovery magic. Garcia scoffed at the demon's tactics, believing their defensive and magical attacks were futile against him. Confident in his superiority, he disparaged his enemies, claiming they were no match for the Imperial Knights. His bravado continued as he slammed his Legend-class spear into the marble, leaving a huge hole. Agera and Esprit easily avoided the attack, remaining calm and focused on the real fight ahead. Esprit used her unique skill observer to maintain contact with Carrera, providing support and information. Zonda, understanding his role as a healer, stayed in a safe zone after offering support. Garcia, seeing them on the defensive, believed he had them on the run. Garcia's bravado was backed by genuine ability. His skill, Subjugation Conquest, granted by Emperor Ludora, allowed him to transform his will to defeat his enemies into a powerful force, enhancing his spear and turning it into a holy weapon. This skill, combined with his Legend-class armor, made him a formidable opponent. Garcia was well aware of how his skill worked. Despite his ongoing attempts to provoke his adversaries, he never lowered his guard. He understood that demon peers were legends, the pinnacles of demonkind, on par with demon lords, formidable opponents not to be taken lightly. Normally, his provocations would incite demons, creating an opening for him to exploit. However, this tactic wasn't working against Agera, which frustrated him. Agera, unfazed by Garcia's taunts, remained calm and composed. Calm down, human. You have far too vulgar a mouth. I do not see all humans as inferior, but it must be said that every soul has a certain dignity to it. And you should know that a person truly vulgar at heart cannot hide it, no matter what he does. Garcia, who used his attitude to boost his fighting power, was offended by Agera's words, slowing his pace and revealing more of his true self. This was exactly Agera's intention, to provoke Garcia in return. Agera continued to evade Garcia's attacks with minimal movement, without even drawing his sword, which wounded Garcia's pride further. Esprit, observing Agera's agility up close, was amazed. She thought, if he's this good at close-range combat, why is he even a demon at all? He can't even cast a single magic spell. It seems so silly to me. She continued to watch the fight unfold, transmitting information to Carrera in real time. "Silence!" shouted Garcia, now clearly agitated. "I will defeat you all and offer your heads to His Majesty the Emperor." Agera responded calmly to Garcia, saying, rather soon for that talk, isn't it? I am generally a patient man, but I can see you are rather impatient. Still not as bad as Lady Carrera, though. She's so short-tempered and simple-minded. It can often be difficult for me." Esprit, relaying this instantly to Carrera, couldn't help but find the situation amusing, thinking, he's gonna be in so much trouble later. He. Esprit acted almost like an audience member rather than a participant. But what Garcia said next brought her back to the reality of the battle. Garcia, clearly agitated, shouted, "Impatient, you say? You bunch of fools, you haven't recognized the difference in our abilities yet? Are you saying that your master is that little brat with dark blue hair? Or that sassy blonde instead? That white-haired beauty needs no introduction, but she's as clueless as a toad at the bottom of a well." Garcia spun his spear above his head, thrusting it straight at Agera with a triumphant expression. He then proclaimed, "I'll tell you this since you'd be ignorant of it otherwise, but there really is such a thing as true monsters in this world. If you knew the true powers of our marshal, Lady Velgrind, you'd know exactly what I mean. And Lieutenant Kondo is a terrifying man as well. Nobody can defeat either of them, not those ogres and not you demons either. They'll all be slaughtered pathetically like stinking insects." Esprit, who had been relaying the battle's details to Carrera, was so worked up by Garcia's words that it took her longer than expected to shut down her observer skill. By the time she did, it was already too late. Ha. I just heard a very funny story from Esprit," Carrera remarked cheerfully, though there was an edge to her tone. "Oh? What kind of story?" Ultima asked, already guessing. "Well, the enemy inside this gate just called you a little brat." "Uh-huh." Ultima's forehead showed blue veins of anger, causing Veyron to panic slightly. He regretted not jumping into a gate earlier, thinking ignorance really is bliss. "And he said you were a toad at the bottom of a well, Testa." "A toad?" Testarossa was stunned. She had always been praised for her beauty and had never been insulted before. Being called a toad made her so angry that she couldn't express it properly. "That, and he called all of us stinking insects," Carrera added. Benimaru raised an eyebrow. "First it's worms and now it's insects," he said, not looking too pleased. He seemed calm, but now he wished he had taken care of this foe himself. Only Zoe remained serene. "So you can maintain a channel with her in this dimension created by Lady Velgrind? A very interesting skill there." He crossed his arms and kept a perceptive eye on Esprit, realizing her capabilities. He'd likely be assigning Esprit to covert missions in the future, but that was a matter for another time. Guerrera's report continued, her tone matter-of-fact as she processed her own emotions. "This man claimed that we'd never be able to beat Lady Velgrind or that Kondo guy. He's really dragging our names through the mud, I'd say. Apparently, we have nothing but a pathetic slaughter ahead." Testarossa, with her crimson eyes showing determination, replied, "You never know how a competition will turn out until you try." She acknowledged that they couldn't beat Velgrind the first time, but she was resolute in their future success. Ultima, puzzled by the insults, asked, "Why does he keep calling us insects and worms? Is he really that strong?" Carrera laughed, but her eyes were filled with danger. Of course not. And even if he was, I still wouldn't stand for this. Ultima, enraged, agreed. No need to show him mercy then, huh? Absolutely not. That human's gone too far with us, Carrera affirmed, holding back her urge to lash out. She expressed a desire to put Garcia in his place, but delegated the task to Agera. As the conversation continued, it was clear that the demonesses were no longer merciful. Their enemies deserved to suffer for their insults. Veyron, listening to his masters, was troubled by Garcia's foolishness, knowing how terrifying the demonesses could be. Oh, you foolish human being, I can only hope it is you alone who will pay for this foolishness, Veyron thought. He hoped Agera could eliminate Garcia quickly to appease their wrath. Benimaru, focused on the task, gave an order. Carrera, can you relay our words from here to inside the gate? I haven't tried it before, but I think so, Carrera replied. Then tell them not to allow their foe to make any more offensive remarks, Benimaru instructed. Carrera nodded, intervening in her channel with Esprit. She wished she had done so sooner. Esprit, can you hear me? Gare, Lady Carrera. You owe me one for that, Gare, but never mind that. Carrera grinned, then gave the order, her malice palpable in her thoughts. Carrera's voice echoed in Esprit's mind. Tell Agera to tear him to pieces and crush his very soul. This is the will of Sir Benimaru as well. Failure is not an option for you. Esprit lamented that now all the officers would know about her power. Carrera had forced her way into Esprit's mind, leaving her no choice but to comply. Consoling herself, Esprit called out to Agera, Hey Agera, Lady Carrera and the others are really mad right now, you know? We better get rid of this guy soon, or we might be in trouble too. Agera, usually calm, was now indignant. I can't help but wonder why Lady Carrera is aware of our situation in here, but let's drop that. For now, we must resolve ourselves. Our masters have been insulted. It is time to give this man exactly what he deserves. Wow, you're really pissed off too, aren't you? Esprit sighed, realizing that there was no stopping Agera now. If he was about to get serious, the right thing to do was sit back and watch. Garcia, oblivious to the heightened determination of his opponents, continued shouting, You guys are all weak as crap, aren't you? Just give up and die already. And don't worry, I'm sure your masters have all been taken care of already. Now you'll get to serve them in the afterlife just like you do now. His commentary was faithfully transmitted back to Carrera and everyone else via thought communication. What a joke this man is. What is Agera doing? Didn't I just tell him to whip his ass? Are you kidding me? Ugh, don't embarrass us out there. Good thing for him Shion wasn't here. If she was, our whole operation would have been ruined just now. Good point. Hey, if you're having trouble in there, we can swap out. But either way, get moving. The scene was becoming lively. If Shion were there, Agera's wishes would have been ignored, but every demon has a certain pride they prefer not to see hurt. To Esprit, it felt like their reputation was deteriorating by the second. This sucks, she thought. Garcia's trash talk made him sound like a wimp, but he truly had the strength to back it up, making him a surprisingly tough opponent. Meanwhile, Zonda prepared tea at a safe distance, seemingly unconcerned. Esprit, exasperated, snapped, Hey Zonda, I let you out of my sight for a moment and now what are you doing? Well, isn't it obvious? Sir Agera is not injured at the moment, so I have little to do, Zonda replied breezily. Esprit, gritting her teeth, thought, I swear I'll kill you. She realized Zonda's thick-skinned nature was likely due to serving Lady Ultima. With Zonda being unhelpful, Esprit relied on Agera to act. Suddenly, Agera spoke. Esprit, I will tell you what I understand so far. What? Esprit responded. It seems, much to my chagrin, that it is impossible for me to defeat this man solely by myself. Huh, Esprit thought. You've got to be screwing with me. She couldn't report failure to her bosses, especially with Carrera watching. Esprit pressed for clarity. What are you talking about? It's quite simple. As this man revs himself up, both his offensive and defensive capabilities receive a boost. I've just realized that no matter how often I hit him with my sword, I would never be able to kill him, Agera explained. Realizing the combined effects of Garcia's ultimate enchantment, alternative, and its sub-skill subjugation conquest, Agera understood that Garcia's defense had been upgraded to God-class level. This made it impossible for Agera's blade to slash through. Is that why my magic didn't work either? Esprit asked. Indeed, he is not at all nimble in his movements, but if I cannot wound him, then we are getting nowhere, Agera responded. Esprit, understanding the predicament, could only scowl and nod. Reporting their inability to win to Carrera would be shameful, but their skills couldn't compete against ultimate enchantments. Only true dragons could break through ultimate skills with simple attacks. As high-level demon peers, their wills weren't strong enough to overcome these skills. Garcia laughed loudly across the arena. Ha 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 ha. Now do you see the difference? Have you given up yet? He believed stalling the enemy until they exhausted themselves would guarantee his victory. Confident that his allies would soon join him, he felt no urgency. Esprit, clicking her tongue in frustration, asked Agera, "You knew this would have happened even if you were allowed to challenge that condo guy, didn't you? Did you have no plan to win at all today?" Agera grinned. "Of course I do. I have a secret plan, and I need your cooperation for it to work." Esprit had no choice but to agree. "Very well, tell it to me." It was Agera's plan all along to rope Esprit in. Knowing her hedonistic side, Agera waited until Esprit had no option left but to help him. Had he simply asked her for a favor at the start, she would have refused. Before Esprit could change her mind, Agera revealed his plan. "I am going to transform my will into a blade with which to strike him down. That is the only way." Realizing that nothing could pierce Garcia's God-class defense, Agera knew he needed a new approach. His agility surpassed Garcia's, but that wasn't enough to land a decisive blow. The only solution was for Agera to reach the same level of power. Concentrating all his strength, he listened to the voice of his sword, striving to become one with it. So our will cannot pierce his armor?" Agera concluded. "Trust in me, Esprit. You may not be the equal of your master, Lady Carrera, but you are still a true master. I know swords are not your cup of tea, but you have a talent for them. Thus, I believe you are worthy of my trust," Agera said. "Huh? What are you talking?" Esprit began. "Place your hand on my back. I will take care of the rest," Agera instructed. Though puzzled, Esprit decided to believe in him and followed his instructions. As she touched his back, Garcia mocked them. "Oh, finally given up, have you? Well, I'll make it easy for you right now, okay? I'm sure your master, the demon lord Rimuru, has met his match by Lady Velgrin's hand by now. A pitiful end for a pitiful little monster, but at least now you can guide him to the afterlife." "What?" Agera responded, his patience finally snapping. "You even think Sir Rimuru, our god, is a lowly monster? And as if that weren't enough, you believe he is dead by now?" The officers outside the gate, hearing this through Esprit, looked visibly different. Agera and Esprit, too, had run out of patience. Carrera's voice echoed in their minds. "All right. I appreciate you retaining your cool when I was insulted earlier, but if you're going to stay calm after that, you're no demons at all. I hereby give you permission to kill him now." Carrera didn't need to give the order. Agera and Esprit intended to do just that. "Use my powers well, Esprit," Agera commanded. "I don't know what this is all about, but all right, I'm gonna kill that bastard." Esprit agreed. Fury fueled their actions. Agera threw his full consciousness into his blade, speaking to it directly. A beautiful voice seemed to respond. "Let me answer your wish. Sharpen your mind and make yourself into a blade." Agera wasn't entirely sure if he heard the voice, but the power was clearly in his hands now. "My body is a blade, an immortal blade, destroying my enemies." Agera's ultimate gift, Blade Transform, turning himself into a powerful golden sword. Esprit drew the sword with a natural fluid motion. The sword, shining with a radiant platinum sheen, emitted a small bouquet of 8 flower petals as it flew through the air. This was the ultimate sword-drawing technique taught by the Oboro Shinmei Ryu, known as multi-layered blossom flash. "Are you dead, you piece of trash?" Esprit taunted. "Huh? What?" Garcia stammered, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His prey, previously focused on defense, seemed to disappear in a blinding flash of light. Though he understood that Agera had turned into a sword, there was no time to ponder the question. Confident in his god-class defenses, Garcia believed no attack could penetrate. He couldn't sense any ultimate power from the demons and felt relieved, taking his time to corner them. However, in an instant, the situation changed. Garcia's armor was torn apart like paper, and his body was sliced into tiny pieces. Slashed no less than 8 times, his life ended before he could react. In Esprit's hand was a small ball of crimson, the embodiment of Garcia's soul. This one's red, huh? Certainly fits him, Esprit muttered. "You think? Because I think he was merely an upstart who didn't know his place," Agera replied as he reverted to his regular form, glaring at the red ball. "No warrior will remain silent when his master is insulted, you fool. But, I should have been warning my lord about this, but instead, I let myself be incensed at the words of a small man." Esprit offered rare words of consolation. Now, what could you do? He was insulting Sir Rimuru himself. Even Lady Carrera gave her permission. Why be so hard on yourself? Yes, well, let's leave it at that, shall we? Agera resolved to take this as a lesson and grow from it. He looked toward Esprit, a little envious of her composure. Having acquired a new ability, Agera remembered fragments of his past life, where he trained to master the blade. The mastery he gained then now resurfaced, or perhaps it was recreated. It was the art of Oboro, the way of dispelling demons. In his previous life, Agera believed his soul resided in his sword, which might explain why transforming into one brought back those memories. He realized he had been a samurai before being reincarnated as a demon in this world. My name was Byakuya Araki then. I suppose that if I went around using the name of a dead man, it'd do nothing but confuse everyone, he thought. The visage of Hakuro flashed through his mind. All of his disciples had grown into great swordsmen, adopting the newly invented style known as Oboro Ryu, or Crestwater. Agera had changed the name from Shinmei Ryu because he felt it was too conciliatory for an anti-monster school. It was a funny memory to recall now. He chuckled, but I suppose I've come around on Shinmei since Sir Rimuru named me, haven't I? No need for me to step in then. Agera had united with an ogre in this world, leading to the birth of a child, who in turn had a grandchild, Hakuro. This world was now filled with people Hakuro had trained, with Rimuru, Agera's master, being the loftiest of them all. Hakuro could take all the credit for training him. All of Agera's honed, polished skills were being safely passed on, something that elated him. It would be boorish for Byakuya Araki to suddenly show up now. He shifted his focus away from the defeated foe and turned on his heel, heading back to Carrera, his current master. Agera had united with an ogre in this world, leading to the birth of a child, who in turn had a grandchild, Hakuro. This world was now filled with people Hakuro had trained, with Rimuru, Agera's master, being the loftiest of them all. Hakuro could take all the credit for training him. All of Agera's honed, polished skills were being safely passed on, something that elated him. It would be boorish for Byakuya Araki to suddenly show up now. He shifted his focus away from the defeated foe and turned on his heel, heading back to Carrera, his current master. The 3 demons emerged from the gate to the cheers of their comrades. Well done. I'm very proud indeed. Carrera slapped Agera on the back with such force it nearly knocked him over. Zonda presented a set of freshly brewed tea and sandwiches, which were well received by the group. Esprit handed over the red ball containing Garcia's soul to Carrera. Here is the soul of that foul-mouthed man. His heart core is locked inside, so his ego is still there. Nice, Esprit. Now we can punish this fool for insulting Sir Rimuru. Ultima interrupted. We sure can. By the way, Carrera, can you leave that job to me? Carrera tossed the ball to Ultima. If it's all right with Benimaru, I don't mind. Whatever you want, Benimaru replied. Torturing the dead wasn't something he enjoyed, but Garcia's comments were unacceptable. He left the matter in the hands of the demons. Wonderful. Now let's get started. Crazed vendetta expiation, Ultima declared, releasing a deadly poison she invented. The poison destroyed spiritual bodies and ate into the astral one as well. Garcia's soul couldn't withstand it, and he screamed in agony. Stop it. Ultima laughed. Yes, look how effective this is. Testarossa, knowing the answer but wanting Garcia to hear it, asked, What kind of effect is it exactly? Ultima explained eagerly. It applies continual, unending pain until the power housed within the soul wears off. This one had a lot of energy, so I think he'll get to enjoy it for a long time to come. And once it's done, maybe in about 1,000 years, he'll be reborn as a clean, unblemished soul. Garcia could only weep in silence, wondering where he went wrong, though it was too late to ponder. Ah yes, good for him. I'm sure he's thanking you right now for letting him atone for his sins, Testarossa said with a warm smile. Benimaru doubted that, but he decided to offer no quarter this time. Besides, there was Zonda's tea break to enjoy. Esprit, wondering if they had time for a break, remarked, You know, when Agera started talking about not being able to win, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Now that things were peaceful again, Esprit felt safe lodging her complaint. Although she knew Agera would have a plan, she was still bitter about being taken advantage of so spectacularly. I didn't say that we couldn't win, Agera retorted, though he wasn't entirely convinced his strategy would work. All was well now, but if Blade Transform had failed, there was no plan B. Right, but you should have at least discussed it with me beforehand. It's fine now that we won, but if we didn't, you'd be too dead to ever atone for it. Esprit was irritated, having faced such dire straits in ages. Well, said Ultima with a smile, certainly you would never have been allowed to lose there. I definitely wouldn't allow it. Besides, Sir Rimuru might not be angry if we lose, but he would be if we die. Yeah, I agree, and that's why I was watching over you guys via Esprit, Carrera added. She seemed hands-off, but would have intervened if Agera's team struggled. Esprit, wanting to be prepared for what came next, asked uneasily, Is Lady Shion well? We've finished our battle, but I don't see her here. No problems there, Benimaru replied nonchalantly. I have a feeling she's forgetting her mission here, but it doesn't seem like she's struggling at all. Soe nodded in agreement. She's overzealous as always. She should know repeating the same old attacks won't work. She needs to consider other approaches. Esprit wondered about this. It was almost like they were watching her fight. Mum, so you're aware of what's going on in there? Testarossa asked. Well, of course. I'm staying here in case something happens to our higher officials, you see. Testarossa's smile deepened as she looked at them both. Carrera and Ultima spat out their tea simultaneously. Huh? Wait, Testarossa, are you saying that you know what's going on beyond the gates without Esprit's reports? Absolutely, Testarossa confirmed, her smile deepening. The realization suddenly dawned on Carrera. Ultima jumped to her feet, exclaiming, And are you watching Sir Rimuru in battle as well? That's so unfair, Testarossa. Seriously, that's awful. And Diablo's the same way. Why do you always act like all that matters is what you want? Don't you think you could have invited us along, maybe? Carrera added, clearly riled by the revelation. Testarossa remained cool, as did Benimaru and Soe. Intelligence gathering was part of their duties, and this was a battle they couldn't miss out on. Incidentally, Shion was unaware of this setup, which explained her eagerness to enter a gate first. Benimaru had kept it a secret from her, knowing she would never move if she could watch Rimuru's fight. Benimaru explained, So, as you see, Moss's monitoring skills are very convenient. We had him infiltrate all 8 gates, so we could set up a monitor for each one. Apparently Moss was still on the job, working without a hitch. Benimaru had ordered him to remain on standby to avoid enemy detection. Carrera and Ultima were clearly miffed, but they now understood the importance of the monitoring setup. I see. I had tried the other gates as well, but I can't even touch any of them. It looks like this dimension is treating Agera as the victor, Esprit noted. Yes, and I cannot enter either, Zonda added. While Zonda's primary role had been brewing tea, Esprit was also locked out from the next challenge. Velgrin's judging standards seemed to prevent re-entry unless the enemy inside was defeated. About what we expected, isn't it? Testarossa said. Yeah, it was smart to have them go in first, Benimaru agreed. The 3 nodded at each other. Benimaru then addressed Carrera. Right, so if one of us is having a hard time, then Testarossa will come in to support us? That's correct. I doubt that will be necessary, and I have other things on my mind anyway, but if it comes to that, I'll be there, Testarossa replied. I'd like to think there's no need, but we do have Sir Rimuru's orders to consider. We need sure victories here, so don't be overeager. Carrera smiled boldly, agreeing with Benimaru. Benimaru frowned slightly and warned, Carrera, I wouldn't let my guard down around your opponent if I were you. Well, certainly not, but why? Carrera inquired. His name was Kondo, right? Well, he's the only one so far who spotted Moss. A single bullet took his replication out, Benimaru explained. Wow, how interesting, Carrera mused, more fascinated than fearful of her opponent's strength. Knowing you, Testarossa said, I'm sure I have nothing to worry about, but if something goes terribly wrong, call for help through Esprit. Carrera raised a hand, making it clear she didn't see that as necessary. Testarossa smiled back, recognizing this as typical Carrera behavior. So the attack on the gates resumed. With Shion tackling 1 gate, that left 6 remaining, and with the exception of the one protected by Velgrind, 5 gates were being stormed at once. Shion, now alone and facing a tough opponent, wore a look of dreadful murder on her face. Her opponent, Minaza, ranked 6th among the Empire's single digits, and one of the 4 knights who guarded Ludora breathed heavily as she glared back at Shion. Despite the intensity of the battle, Shion managed to shout with fierce determination, praising Minaza for making it difficult for her. Minaza, though far from unscathed, with her uniform torn and exposing bare skin, showed no sign of distress. She had stopped using mimicry to hide her true form, fighting with everything she had. Minaza commended Shion for defeating her children, referring to the insectoid corpses that littered the ground around them. These were Minaza's offspring, and their defeat had enraged her. Shion, however, remained unfazed, claiming that she had faced far more powerful insectoids before. The mention of Razul, a guardian of the West whom Shion had previously defeated, changed Minaza's expression. She revealed that Razul had betrayed their kind, and that the aggressors, a group of invaders from another world, had found refuge under Emperor Ludora's rule. Razul's refusal to pledge allegiance made him an unforgivable fool in her eyes. Shion, curious about other possible allies Minaza might have, questioned her about the presence of other aggressors in the world. Minaza explained that there were many sentient species from their homeworld, including insectas, cryptids, and mystics. These semi-spiritual life forms could manifest in this world given enough time. Shion didn't really care if she got an answer, but Minaza was nice enough to give one anyway. This underworld gate reminded her of the gates of hell, something near and dear to Diablo and the other demons, but it sounded like Minaza's world featured 3 major races vying for supremacy. It existed in parallel with the hell the demons called home, and as Minaza described it, it faced severe poverty and food shortages. Thus, aggressors like her looked for every chance to invade this world. For many years now, they had been apparently sending their compatriots over here in order to expand their territory. Insectoids like army wasps were apparently part of that effort. The leader of this offshoot band was Razul, whom Shion's party defeated. He proved that the aggressors were far from a monolith, but then Shion recalled something else. Didn't Rimuru pick up Apito and Zegion while they were on the run from someone else? Shion didn't have any real solid basis for this, but she made that call anyway. She trusted her intuition, and she was proud of the fact that it had never failed her in cases like these. And she was right too. It was no coincidence either. Having died and been revived once, Shion was now deeply connected to Rimuru, and now Ciel, his newfound skill. Its computational skills were now interfacing with the fragmentary information Shion had obtained so far, giving her deep insight into the truth. Minaza's lower body swelled up. Several mouths grew out from it, usually hidden by the skirt of her military uniform, and each one of those mouths was now producing ominous-looking eggs at the same time. Minaza stopped in the middle of her bragging. It was obvious why. A single flash from Shion's Rimuru version 2 snuffed out the lives of so many insectors as soon as they began. Minaza's power was similar to Apito's motherly queen in many respects. Termed voracious resurrection, it allowed her to regenerate her children by consuming their corpses over and over again. Combined with the ultimate enchantment, alternative from Ludora, it was further powered up, the death and rebirth cycle now taking much less time. The countless insectoids Minaza was birthing were formidable opponents for Shion, each possessing abilities equivalent to high-level magic-born, with a few even comparable to pre-awakened demon lords. Despite the tough fight, Shion managed to dispatch all of them. With optimal action, part of her unique Master Chef skill, she defeated the reborn insectors in an instant, leaving Minaza shocked. Minaza's high-speed childbirth process usually exhausted her opponents without her lifting a finger. This proven strategy had never failed her before, but Shion, a wild card, confused her. However, Minaza, as a queen, was determined not to make the same mistake again. Taking her children's power as her own, Minaza shifted into battle form. Shion, with Rimuru version 2 at the ready, joyfully engaged her, leading to a long, intense battle. The fight seesawed back and forth. Minaza's attacks could wound Shion, but ultra-speed regeneration instantly healed her. Conversely, none of Shion's attacks could scratch Minaza's exoskeleton, protected by an ultimate enchantment incorporating legend-class armor. Even god-class gear would struggle against it. Minaza's speed surpassed Shion's, but Shion had more muscle. While Minaza had the upper hand in defense, Shion was more adept at healing. Shion relentlessly tried to crack through Minaza's exoskeleton, knowing that once she did, Master Chef would take care of the rest. Minaza, realizing Shion was more obstinate than expected, felt threatened. Despite her seemingly slipshod style, Shion was proficient with a sword. Not as skilled as Benimaru, but her instructor Hakuro fully attested to her abilities. This combination of sword mastery and brute strength turned the battle into a nightmarish marathon for Minaza. But Shion wasn't enjoying the battle as much as she had hoped. She wanted to defeat Minaza quickly and move on, but Minaza was proving to be stronger than she initially seemed. Shion realized she couldn't let her guard down, understanding the truth in Rimuru's advice. Typically, Shion didn't think things through deeply, but now she found herself pondering how to defeat Minaza. It was a bit late for strategic thinking, but at least she understood the need to use her head. Even so, she had Ciel on her side, which offered her an advantage. As she focused on the battle, Shion remembered Rimuru asking her questions when he endowed her with an evolutionary reward. She hadn't given much thought to her answers and had accepted whatever he provided, but nothing noticeable had happened to her body. Unlike Benimaru, who evolved into a flame soul ogre, Shion remained an ordinary Oni, content with her strength. However, her current strength alone wouldn't grant her victory over Minaza. Seeking more power, the soul corridor opened up to her. Ciel chose the best species for her, the Battle Soul Ogre, a high-level chaos elemental with unparalleled material strength. Trusting Ciel entirely, Shion threw the ball in Ciel's direction and refocused on Minaza. She noticed her aura surging and her spirit began to surpass her body. As the voice suggested, her new species was awakening, and Ciel managed the evolutionary possibilities, selecting the most suitable ones. Minaza, shocked by Shion's transformation, exclaimed, What are you? That surging aura of yours. Were you just toying with me up until now? With her evolution into a battle soul ogre, Shion became an uncommon but powerful chaos elemental, equipped with infinite regeneration, making her indestructible as long as any magicules remained. Her attacks now caused not only physical damage, but also destruction on the spiritual level, giving her a decisive advantage over all other elements. Shion had evolved into a natural enemy of spiritual life forms. The evolution optimized her body for combat, and Shion instinctively felt the changes. She felt refreshed and invigorated, as if stretching out under a clear blue sky. Ready with her Rimuru version 2, she spoke to Minaza with utmost politeness, signaling the end of their prolonged encounter. Minaza, realizing Shion had hidden her true power, revealed her own true form in a bid to gain more offensive force, despite the toll it took on her lifespan. As the battle began again, Minaza invoked the ultimate enchantment alternative, but Shion's decisive move, Chaotic Fate, shattered Minaza's final attack before it could fully manifest. The battle ended in an instant, with Minaza reduced to a dismembered pile of flesh. Shion's cold, disdainful words stung Minaza, who was now unable to accept her imminent death. Realizing that Shion was an opponent she couldn't hope to defeat, Minaza faced her demise. Shion's evolution into a battle soul ogre had elevated her power and transformed her blade into a god-class weapon, Maru Divine. Perhaps Minaza might have stood a chance if her power was her own and not borrowed from the Emperor, but against Shion, she was utterly outmatched. As Minaza's strength waned, she muttered about her children and an insect lord, her vision and hopes fading. Shion's chaotic fate had already obliterated every living thing in the arena, leaving Minaza with nothing but words of defiance. Minaza, now dismembered and close to death, struggled to comprehend her defeat. Shion, however, offered nothing but words of mercy, her gaze cold and detached. With Minaza's final breath, she mentioned the Insect Lord, a title that carried significant meaning. Yet Shion showed little interest, dismissing it with a casual remark. So Minaza, an aggressor from another world, met the same pitiful end as her children. She had been trying to build a paradise for the insectors under the patronage of Emperor Ludora, but now she vanished from existence just before she achieved her ambition. Out of the 7 demon peers, Veyron was the second most powerful, having achieved the rank of Duke and remaining undefeated for over 4,000 years. Despite his impressive record, he found himself humiliated and on the floor, facing Marco. Marco, utilizing his unique skill adapter, mimicked Kondo's appearance and abilities, combining it with the ultimate enchantment, alternate to elevate his power to Kondo level. Veyron, despite his titanic strength, was a step below Marco. Only Veyron's vast experience prevented him from being killed outright. Instead, he was brought to his knees. Years of honed combat skills seemed ineffective against Marco. However, Veyron did not fear this reality. Deep down, he enjoyed the challenge, having confidently declared before his master Ultima and the officers that he could win. Marco, poised to recommend surrender, was taken aback by Veyron's confident reaction. The apparent ability gap between them seemed as vast as heaven and earth, with Kondo's overwhelming strength functioning as Marco's own. This discrepancy in power angered Marco, whose magicule count was significantly higher than Veyron's. With no interference, Marco held an overwhelming advantage in their one-on-one duel. Veyron, however, stood up and laughed, dismissing Marco's impersonation as insufficient to defeat him. He emphasized that a counterfeit could never rival the real thing, agitating Marco further. Veyron wished to end the conversation and engage in battle. With a shout, Veyron activated his newfound skill. Veyron, who had long served as Ultima's butler, was responsible for all aspects of her personal care except for cooking, which Zonda handled. Over time, Veyron developed a unique skill known as Imitator, allowing him to transform into anyone he saw. This ability was similar to Marco's adapter, but more precise. However, Marco's skill was enhanced by the borrowed power of Emperor Ludora, making Veyron seem outmatched. Despite this, Veyron decided to use Imitator to transform himself into the Demon Lord Rimuru, hoping to gain some of his immense power. Marco could only reproduce up to 80% of Kondo's actual strength, and Veyron knew it was impossible to perfectly recreate someone much stronger. But he hoped this imitation would give him an edge. As Veyron prepared to transform, he heard a voice, akin to the world language, telling him, "I cannot allow you to do that. Instead, I will give you another power." The message puzzled him at first, but understanding its meaning brought him close to tears. He felt watched over with love, offering his thanks as if praying to a god. Veyron's skill then evolved into the ultimate gift, Artist. This new power, even if based on imitation, could still be considered art if it truly moved people. With this newfound skill, Veyron was convinced he could defeat Marco. Veyron, now confronting Marco, took on the appearance of a young warrior with keen, sharpened eyes. This young warrior, resembling Agera, was actually Byakuya Araki from his younger days, the ultimate imitation crafted by Veyron. His skill, Artist, allowed him to recreate the full power of someone in their glory days, making his imitation a masterful forgery. With his newfound power, Veyron's magicules matched those of an awakened demon lord. Marco, astonished by Veyron's transformation, realized he felt like a different person altogether. Ignoring Marco's shock, Veyron materialized a sword using the demon-specific create material skill. This sword, imbued with the ultimate gift Artist, performed as close to the real thing as possible. Veyron remarked on Kondo's underestimation, hinting that Lady Carrera might soon bring about his downfall. Marco, finding the idea ridiculous, laughed it off. However, the tension between them was palpable, and a battle was inevitable. Both sides moved simultaneously. Veyron's 8 sword strikes, executed with precision, countered Marco's 5 slashes. The remaining 3 strikes amputated both of Marco's arms, stopping the blade's tip at his neck. The intense pain forced Marco to shut off his mimicry as he struggled to control the bleeding from his stumps. Veyron, reverting to his own form, assured Marco that he wouldn't kill him or take him hostage. Instead, he expressed his unwavering dedication to serving Lady Ultima and doing anything to please her. Marco felt an inscrutable fear of what was to come. His question, "What are you gonna do to me?" revealed his vulnerability and confirmed he had fallen into Veyron's trap. Veyron, serving as Ultima's butler, explained that his lady loved inflicting pain on those who opposed her, letting their bodies rot slowly rather than killing them immediately. Despite his duty to admonish her, Veyron admitted he enjoyed watching the powerful plead for relief, making Marco the perfect toy for his sadistic pleasure. Marco, never having known defeat, began pleading with Veyron, promising never to disobey again. However, Veyron, an expert at instilling true fear, refused to entertain the possibility of surrender. He deemed it shameful to bargain after defeat, emphasizing that it was exactly what Marco's side had done before. With a maniacal grin, Veyron revealed his true nature as a cruel, brutal, and merciless demon. Marco's desperate cry for help would never reach Lieutenant Kondo. Veyron, finding Marco's wail pleasant but potentially disturbing to others, unceremoniously pulled out Marco's tongue, silencing him. Marco's silent voice echoed away in the alternate dimension, cut off from the world.